Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see some familiar faces. Just getting everybody in. So as per usual, we're going to start with kind of reflecting back to last week. And the invitation for you here is to think back about your day so far, just whatever's been going on for you right now, and to just think about what is one little thing that you can celebrate right now. Of course, last week we were talking about celebrating the little things. So just inviting you to look back around celebrating whatever you want, something that is worth celebrating just today. How the question is, how can you celebrate it in this brief time frame using maybe shape, line, color, imagery, words, movements, or sounds. So just take a moment and have a small celebration of something that's already happened for you today while we arrive and show up to this space here together. Might choose to interpret this gratitude. You might choose to just interpret this as something personal in your life. It might just be something that you love. However, you want to interpret this little thing in your day, in your life. And of course, we're speaking the language of shape, line, color, imagery, or words, whatever resonates with you. It might be movements, might be sounds, things we haven't played too much with so far in this workshop, but some of you have touched upon in some other work that we've done. But whatever the medium is, it might just be calling for the celebration here. Give you another minute or two just to capture your little thing and your celebration. Sabrina says, Happy Halloween. Yes, Happy Halloween, everybody. I have to admit, I almost thought about putting a costume on, but I am under the weather today. I've got a late last night when I went to bed, I had the feeling of like, oh no, I'm getting sick. So I'm here with you, and I might make it out trick-or-treating with my children tonight, but much more than that, I'm not really sure if I can muster. I'll give you just a few more seconds just to wrap that up, and then we'll move ahead. I'm gonna, instead of coughing into the microphone, I'm gonna do my best to hit the mute button before I cough for you all. New Zoom etiquette, right? So let's get started. So this week we're capturing sparks. Oh, actually, I don't think I changed the week on that. I should say week 7. Capturing sparks of ideas is what we're doing here today. And last week we were celebrating the little things. So I'm just gonna just bring this slide up here again, just to kind of remind you where we're at, where we've been going, that sort of thing. I think a couple of you here in the live have done this class before. Some of you, it's new. I'm sure many of you who are catching the recordings of this, which yes, I can see many of you are doing the recordings, which is so wonderful. Just want to kind of solidify just the progression of where we're going. Sometimes it can just help to have a bit of a mental image. So we started way back in week 1 with kind of thinking about safety, right? And recognizing that this needs to be a safe place for us to show up, which is easier said than done, but setting the intention that, yeah, this is a safe place where I'm not going to be harsh on myself. I'm going to be curious with myself. And then the next week, we introduced this kind of mindfulness principle of the observer, right? And recognizing that there's a part deep, deep inside of us that's wise. And it's not the voice that's mean, and it's not the voice that's always wanting more, or it's not the voice that's unsatisfied inside of our head. There's a piece back there that's always observing and watching all of that happen. And so that's the piece that we really want to kind of be in touch with as we're doing this process. The next week, we looked at this notion of true welcome, so that this can be a place where we can get to know really any part of ourselves, right? That we can welcome in the hard parts, the difficult voices, the unpleasant feelings, but also the joy, the gratitude, that it's a place where we can be intentional about how we show up and what we are welcoming to our practice. Then we started to explore our gremlins. Our hobgoblin was kind of the thing, or inner critic, whatever you might want to call it, and really naming that voice in particular as just one voice of many, many inside of ourselves, right? Recognizing that there are many parts of ourselves, and that the observer is the true version of us, right? And everything else is voices or old patterns or echoes of things. And so we can get to know them and be curious about them and observe them through this practice. So that was our first 4 weeks, and that was kind of very much about this internal experience that many of us show up to with our creative practice, right? We know that we show up and we've got all this history and all of this kind of ways that we are, and so we really need to kind of make sense of all of that before we can kind of go in and do really any creative work, I would argue. So then we started to look at, like, what are how could we use this practice to maybe identify and follow our deepest calls? So just an example of the type of question, the type of thing that we can explore in this sort of work, these deeper, more kind of principle valued questions, right? And so we looked at what our deepest call might be and how we might be able to make sense of that. Last week, we started to look at celebrating the little things. So turning that gaze, again, further outward and recognizing this kind of reciprocity and connection that exists within the world, and how we can use this art journaling practice of showing up to celebrate the little things that are happening. And this week, we're going to look at capturing sparks of ideas. And so this really is about how to use this practice not only for ourselves and our well-being, to get to know ourselves and do that reflective work, but also start to link it into who we are as creative beings, who we are in the world, the innovations, the ideas, the interests that we have, and how we can start to develop ideas. Some of you might be in creative practices already, or want to cultivate a creative practice. And so we can start to look at how that works there too. And for those of you that feel like, well, I don't really have a creative practice where I'm doing it. This is kind of the type of work I'd like to do. I'm going to kind of show you how this fits into your life in terms of that as well. Excuse me. And then next week is our last week, and we're exploring resilience. We're going to kind of thread all of these pieces together and explore resilience. So I want to read to you, I know I've been reading to you poems, but I want to read to you this excerpt from the book, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. This is one of my favorite passages, one of my favorite things that I think about often. And it's not a poem, it's an excerpt from the book, but it captures so beautifully this creative process and this kind of notion of capturing these little sparks of ideas and things. So this section of the book is called The Tiger's Tail, and again, it's from Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She says, I met Ruth Stone when she was nearly 90 years old. She regaled me with stories about her extraordinary creative process. Ruth Stone is a poet. She told me that she was a child growing up on a farm in rural Virginia. She would be out working in the fields, and when she would sometimes hear a poem coming towards her, hear it rushing across the landscape at her like a galloping horse, Whenever this happened, she knew exactly what she had to do next. She would run like hell towards the house, trying to stay ahead of the poem, hoping to get a piece of paper and a pencil fast enough to catch it. That way, when the poem reached her and passed through her, she would be able to grab it and take dictation, letting the words pour forth onto the page. Sometimes, however, she was too slow and she couldn't get to the paper and pencil in time. At those instances, she could feel the poem rushing through her body and out the other side. It would be in her for a moment, seeking a response, and then it would be gone before she could grasp it, galloping away across the earth, as she said, searching for another poet. But sometimes, and this is the wildest part, she would nearly miss the poem, but not quite. She would just barely catch it, she explained, by the tail, like grabbing a tiger. Then she would almost physically pull the poem back into her with one hand, even as she was taking dictation with the other. In these instances, the poem would appear on the page from the last words to the first, backwards, but otherwise intact. So this is a beautiful story around the creative process. And I think we're exploring this notion of capturing sparks of ideas, this notion of grabbing the tiger by the tail when creativity strikes, when it comes near us, that we need to be able to grasp it and capture it. And I love this idea that this is something Elizabeth Gilbert explores more thoroughly in the book, is that, like, if you miss this and it passes through you, the creative idea might go searching for someone else, right? So that there's like kind of a finite amount of time that we have to kind of capture these ideas, or they will kind of lose life, or they will go on and land on somewhere else. And this beautiful story of like being able to kind of write the poem backwards, that it really is physically moving within her, is just truly a beautiful story. So we're going to play around with the order of some things here today, but I really want to kind of talk more about this before we share more about what this might look like. So I tend to think about this as catching lightning, right? That we are these creative beings, that we have, all of our stuff in our life, our personal experiences, whatever might be happening here, whatever's happening there, our mental health, all this kind of stuff. But we also at our core are creative beings, right? And so we have inspiration, ideas that might come to us. And so there might be a better metaphor that works for you. It might be this kind of catching a tiger by a tail, but it might be that you can feel inspiration or ideas come to you like lightning or wind kind of blowing through you, or that there's kind of something knocking at your door saying, hey, listen to me. Like I'm an idea and I want you to develop me. I think we all can kind of relate to that. And this sometimes can happen very often, or sometimes can be fleeting, depending on what's going on with us. So however you choose to see this notion of sparks of ideas, of lightning striking or wind or whatever, it's all the same. It's impermanent. And this is what Elizabeth Gilbert is getting at. These ideas, if they are not cared and nurtured, if we think of them as sparks that need, oxygen and some kind of love to care for it, they will go away. They will fade away. These ideas are impermanent. So not every idea or inspiration will be fully birthed, and that's okay, right? I think that's something we need to give ourselves permission to do, right? Is that, yes, we're creative beings. Yes, we have a desire to create. This is probably why we're here. We want to know ourselves through this creative practice, but we also want to make things. We also want to explore things. We want to speak in this language of shape, line, and color, and we're not going to be able to birth every single idea. But the more that we can capture, and the more that we're attuning and listening to ourselves and the connection of the world, the more we have this menu of ideas kind of sitting in front of us, waiting to see which one do we want to develop, which one of these. It's almost like a privilege to have many ideas to be able to be ready and waiting for you. And I know many of you have experienced the opposite of that, where there might be no ideas. There might be a blockage. You might feel like long time ago, I used to create, long time ago, I used to make things, or there was that stage in my life or whatever, where I used to make things. And so it might be that there just needs to become a practice and an opening kind of back up to this notion that you are a creative being and that you are ready to create. So where do we find ideas, right? If we're somebody who's like has this blank page situation happening in our lives, feels, like we really need a lot of help, that sort of thing. Like, I don't, you're talking about these great ideas. I don't have great ideas. I'm just kind of this person who has a desire to create. Where do I find these ideas from? And I think what we explored last week is that they can be little things. They can also be big things. They can come from kind of all kinds of different places. But the most important thing is this listening to them, right? And this is really what we've been doing throughout this practice all along is we're listening to ourselves, we're listening to our creative impulses, we're trusting our impulses. There really is this dialogue. So this type of practice can become a safe place where, yes, you get to know and explore yourself. Yes, you get to see the types of creative ideas or kind of start to play with creative ideas and listen to them and make space for them so that they're not so impermanent and fleeting. It might just be that you take a few moments to explore and play with them. The other thing I think is really important that I want to share with you is you might be already listening to this thinking again, and I've kind of already alluded to this, that like, I'm not an artist, Rachel. I'm just somebody who likes to kind of make art, right? You're talking about making these ideas. I really like exploring myself or getting to know myself, but you kind of seem to be calling me towards like bigger ideas, bigger artistic practice, having a creative practice, and that's not me, right? And if that's the voice that's kind of showing up in your mind as you're saying things, I would ask you, what better thing could you be doing with your time than making something? And perhaps it is the opportunity to give yourself permission to just create and to just be a creative being and not necessarily like publish your poems or share your art or do whatever. Maybe, I don't know, but also maybe just because what better use of our time is there? And I think I heard this the other day. This is a quote from my 5-year-old daughter, Calliope. She was sitting down making a craft that honestly, I have no idea where it went afterwards. And she said to me, I just feel better when I'm making art. And I thought, yeah, that's it, Calliope, right? Like that might end up in the trash 5 minutes later, but you feel better when you are like following an idea, being like, oh, there's something interesting here. I'm going to do this. We show up with our full selves. And if we can do that observation and that witnessing and that listening of ourselves, we can allow ourselves to kind of be swept away with these ideas and explore. And what better use of time is there? You could be watching Netflix, I guess, or scrolling on your phone or cleaning your house. But really, I think locking into a big idea, having a project is a very worthy endeavor. So as I've been trying to do throughout this, I'm trying to give you kind of real life examples. So I'm going to just share with you where I'm at in a little creative process right now here, where I'm kind of chasing this idea and kind of show you where I'm at. And I'll just share this really briefly, just as an example of kind of those sparks of ideas, how one thing can lead to another. And we kind of need to nurture them here and then nurture them there and then nurture them there. And we don't know where they might come from. So as you all know, I have 3 young children or 2 young children and a teenager, I should say. And so I'm always reading children's books. And I came across this beautiful book called The Honeybee. And I was so taken with the palette in it. It is all yellows, these kind of golden yellows and black and gray. That yellow, black, and gray seem to be the color. And I thought to myself, oh, you know what? I love that color palette. So I kind of went out in my world. It was fall and tried to take as many pictures of gray and yellow and black as I could, have a whole bunch of photos on my phone. And that was really beautiful. And then I was like, okay, well, like, where would I take that? So I'm following this idea. It seems to kind of be sticking with me. Then I made these kind of like small little pieces of kind of words and images that just had those colors in them and had some of the leaves. And I felt pretty happy about that. But I thought, oh, maybe I can develop this idea further. And now what I'm in the middle of is I'm in the middle of making poems, each kind of inspired by the kind of sense or meaning or something to me that is around yellow, black, and gray. So it started with this little inspiration from another artist around this book. And I kind of followed, the tiger tail. I grabbed that and then I grabbed that and I pulled closer and I pulled closer. And so that's sometimes how the creative process can look if we have an intention to follow it, Not every idea do I have the bandwidth or the capacity to follow, but I certainly have been following this one. And it has been a real joy for me this fall to be able to have a project to kind of sink my teeth into. So, what I want to invite us to do is to kind of see if we can harvest some ideas from already from the work that we've done here. See if we could capture some ideas, find some sparks of ideas that might just be sitting there, perhaps already in your art journal that you've been working on throughout this project or somewhere else, just ready to be harvested. So, I'm going to just walk you ahead and let you know where we're going, and then we'll go back and do the meditation, okay? So we're going to do things a little bit differently this week. I'm going to have you flip through your art journal. Maybe you have the place where you've been working with us all along, or you have another art journal or something else, some papers around. I'm going to have you start this process by looking back and seeing if you can find 3 sentences or phrases from the writing that you've been doing that feel kind of abundant. And maybe 2 or 3 kind of small snippets, corners, or things like that that you feel like have some kind of, I like this little bit here, or this was really interesting here. Okay. If you don't have your art journal with you or you haven't been working along with us, no problem. Just pick up a magazine or pick up a book that has pictures with it and see if you can find 3 sentences that you think are worthy, or 2 to 3 kind of images that you think are worthy. So this, I'm calling this kind of like harvesting, right? We're gonna check in with our word, then we're gonna start with kind of what we've already created so far here. Okay. And then we're going to play with the order here because, again, we're starting to get very comfortable with this process and it's a chance for us to play with it. We're going to start with some writing. We're going to go through and do that harvesting, and then we're going to start with writing. We're going to start with this, right? I have this a bit out of order. I think we'll do the stillness at the beginning. I'm sorry, friends. It shouldn't say stillness there. And then we're going to jump in to setting our intention and asking our question. And so you're going to set your own intention again, like I want to be a curious person today, or I just want to explore some, kind of be open, or whatever it might be, whatever you want to lean or grow towards. And then you're going to ask a question. So it might be like, what type of attention from me does this spark or idea need next, right? So the idea is that you've gone through things you've created before. You're harvesting a few ideas, right? You're going to write about it, maybe do some exploration. Then you're going to set your intention and your questions and kind of figure out, what do you need to, what are we harvesting here? Is there something else going on? And then we're going to move into a new creative process. Again, this is very fluid and loose. If you're feeling a little bit like, Rachel, what are you asking me to do? I thought we had this whole thing dialed. Don't worry. I think you can trust your impulses in the process. And if there's an idea that you want to develop, spend the time developing that idea. If you're still looking for an idea, spend your time looking for that idea. Okay, there's lots of different ways for us to play with this. So we're going to go back. I'm going to flip this back. We're going to start. My apologies again. This shouldn't say stillness here. We're going to start with stillness. And then we're going to go back. I'm going to walk you through just some kind of centering, some kind of awareness. We're going to anchor ourselves. Then we're going to open up our art journals, see what kind of harvesting we can find. If you don't have your art journal, you're going to find a book or a magazine or something like that. Then you're going to do some writing. You're going to start with some writing, and then you're going to set an intention and a question. Again, with the notion that we have all this kind of stuff that we've been making, and maybe we kind of just want to harvest it down and see is there an idea here worth developing? Is there something here that has some energy to it that kind of wants me to fan the flames up? Okay. So a lot of talking, a lot of thinking. Let's go back and just do some centering, some awareness. So I want to invite you to just join me in this brief meditation. If it feels safe to close your eyes, please do so. If not, please find a place to just soften your gaze. As always, we're just going to feel the shift in that energy. You might feel the anticipation, or some of the kind of thinking energy that's happened with us. We know that we're being called or asked to kind of do something a bit different next, and there might be some residual energy or thought around that, and that's okay. Some anticipation. Just see if you can just be here right now. You might want to take a moment and just kind of name some of the things going on inside of you right now, inside of you. There's sensations in your body or feelings in your body. Is there persistent thoughts or feelings? Maybe some voices that really want to talk or be loud right now. Let's see if you can take a moment just to really, again, note what is it like to be me right here in this moment? And I want to invite you to just maybe locate or make contact with that part of you that is really seeking creativity. You are here for a reason. Our paths have found each other magically. And you are interested in exploring and deepening your creativity. Maybe just see if you can feel in your body, where does that creative energy lie? There are many things to many people, to yourselves, and to the world, but where does that creative energy lie? You might just want to make contact with that creative energy and just let it know that you see it and that you value it. You really want to nurture it and be there for it. It might even be your intention to just be with your creative self, to just trust it and listen to it. And so take a few more deep breaths and welcome this creative side with you and ask if it will come with you in this kind of harvesting journey we're going on. Ask if this creative part of you will work alongside you to harvest, to find some ideas, to find some sparks of inspiration here today. And with that connection and that contact and that knowing, take a few more deep breaths. Feel that intention solidifying in you. And I want to welcome you to open your eyes and begin harvesting on this journey together. I want to ask you first just to check in with one word, write down one word where you're at right now. And then when you feel ready to look back through your art journal or through some of the creative things that you've been working on in this class or elsewhere, and you might just want to flip through, just look, oh, I wrote this on this day, or I made this picture on this day. See if you can find a few, two or three sentences that feel abundant, some phrases or sentences. And again, a couple little snippets of images or things that you created. You might even want to pull out your phone and take a photo of kind of the little corners or the little snippets of imagery that you feel really moved by or that you feel like there's an extra energy calling to you with. Okay. So I'm going to give you probably about 7 or 8 minutes to do this. I am going to turn on our music for us. Pardon me. So when it's time to move ahead, I will walk you through the next steps of the process. you have questions, you can pop them in the chat.
זמר כמיים מסתחרר ואף לא קל כנפיים נשר בשמיים מליבי בוקע זמר כמיים מסתחרר ואף לא נשר בשמיים שר ליבי בשחוק שר ליבי בדמע מטהר נפשי בצליל וצבע שירתה של אמא טבע שר ליבי בשחוק שר ליבי בדמע מטהר נפשי בצליל וצבע שירתה של אמא טבע שירו נא חי שירו נא ביחד עת אביב הגיע חלף הפחד שירו נא ביחד.
So again, there are going to be sparks of ideas, just little things that make you feel interested, or you're like, oh, there's just going to be a different energy to them. They don't have to feel complete or full. They're going to be bits.
Desde Cunyac viene agüita serpenteando por las acequias en remolinos hacia nuestras vidas. Desde Cunyac viene serpenteando por las acequias en remolinos hacia nuestras vidas de cantarolinas a la vez llorando toditas mis penas se acabaron. Pachamama está de fiesta. Una estrellita
So again, feel free to document these how you want. If there's one already that you're like, no, this one is so great. Don't bother looking for more. We're just looking for sparks of ideas, things that you may have already written or created somewhere. Just offering it some attention, seeing if we can breathe some air onto it. I'm going to give you just maybe 1 or 2 more minutes for this, and then we'll move ahead. So, for those of you that feel ready to move ahead, again, we're playing with this process and we're going to shake it up a bit and start with some writing. And the invitation for you is to do some writing here from the perspective of this idea. And so, I want you to write, maybe just choose the one idea, the one thing that feels most like has the most aliveness, the most energy in it. And I want you just to write with one page here, exploring from the perspective of the ideas. What could it be? What is the potential? So it might be that, I'm this phrase, right? And I could be a poem, or maybe you want to build me into some of your artwork, or what's the meaning? What is the purpose and the meaning of this? Might be this texture or this color or this kind of little bit that you found that was kind of interesting, or this imagery. And again, just we're going to write with one page is around what is the potential here? What is the potential of this idea? So I'm going to give you about 7 minutes to do this, and then we're going to set a quick intention and a question, and we're just going to play with some art making. Again, playing with this process, moving it a bit out of order than what we're used to. So I'll give you another minute or two to do the writing. If you feel like you've written sufficiently, you are welcome to move ahead and write out that intention, write out that question, whatever feels right. If you want to skip the intention or skip the question, if it feels already like you've got an intention and a question, just move ahead and let's just explore through some visual piece. Again, this process is for you. It is just a guide. And so you can trust yourself to do whatever you need to do. But the question here to explore to help us move ahead in the process is, what type of attention from me does this spark or idea need? And maybe it's just to be with it and really play with it again. Or maybe it needs some kind of other care or attention or supports or needs. And so you can move into the creative process and see what happens there. So, whatever feels right for you, you can trust yourself to move ahead as needed. Give you probably 13, 14 minutes or so to play with some visual pieces, okay? want to give you another 3 or 4 minutes to kind of do your exploration, whatever you've chosen to do with this time.
Hello.
And give you just another minute or so just to finish your visual piece, and then we'll come back together and have a little bit of a chat around what that felt like to develop your idea. Sorry, I'm on mute. I'm gonna bring us back together here. I know we've had a few friends that have joined us midway through. You're welcome to stay and connect with us. We're just at the end of our process here in the last 10 minutes. Um, I have a few things I want to share, a few words, but before I jump too far ahead, I'd love for you to just do your checkout word. Just write one word, where you're at, what's happening. Maybe it might be a feeling, a sensation, whatever feels right for you. Yeah, Sabrina has wrote in the chat, serene is her word. Lovely. You're welcome to share it there or keep it private, whatever feels right for you. So this check inward, this check outward, it can just be a really interesting way just to kind of check with yourself, right? And even maybe compare where you're at from the beginning to the end. Maybe not. Sometimes, we all have the experience of coming in feeling maybe a bit frazzled and maybe leaving some of the words that are coming in the chat here as focus or feels good or forward. But maybe you started with those two. Just an interesting thing to kind of offer ourselves that parameter of like one word, where am I at? Right. Again, always looking to kind of name and check in with ourselves rather than just staying on autopilot. So just the add into the process. So I recognize this process was like a bit scrambled today. We had this whole thing dialed where we were just showing up, doing the same thing again and again. And then today I kind of like threw a little like, I don't know, let's scramble it up. Let's do something different. Let's change it. Mostly because I want you to see the versatility of this process. I think at this point in the process, you're aware of kind of showing up to this, being here for yourself, recognizing what's going on. And the invitation, of course, is to like break it and make it your own. Take what works for you and what doesn't work for you. I really hope that you found value in sitting with yourself and your ideas. I hope that you found an idea or an interest or something kind of, yeah, something kind of going on for you. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you in the chat to share what your idea is that you're going to stay with, or what you're going to kindle or develop, or what kind of was there. So I might just give you like a minute or two just to think about like, could you write it in one word? Could you write it in three words? Is it a sentence? But I just think it would be really interesting for us all to just kind of say like, what was the idea I found here? What am I going to nurture? What is it I'm going to nurture? So I'm going to read to you our final quote here, and then we'll go back while you're formulating your thoughts around this. This is a quote from Rick Rubin, who's a famous music producer and just wrote a book about creativity called The Creative Way, I believe. And Rick says, I never decide if an idea is good or bad until I try it. So much of what gets in the way of things being good is thinking that we know. And the more that we can remove any baggage we're carrying with us and just be in the moment, use our ears and pay attention to what's happening and just listen to the inner voice that directs us, the better. So basically, he's talking about what we're trying to do here, right? It's just listening, doing that deep listening and just being with whatever is here. So I hope that you have found some value. If you want, pop it into the chat. I would love to see what idea is that you're going to explore. Somebody says, relaxing into the now. That's like the idea of the century. Relaxing into the now. That is incredible. Just putting it into the chat. Yeah, no worries. We've got some folks who kind of came in late or feeling a bit discombobulated in the chat. But yeah, I'd love to see what else. What other ideas did you find here today? What did you harvest in your process that you want to chat? You're welcome to unmute your mic too and speak if you'd rather, or you can pop it in the chat. Someone says one and then ness, oneness. That's interesting. Another person says focused fun and exploration in my art practice. Focused fun. That's a very interesting place. My inner world is a deep pool. Hmm. Excuse me. My inner world is a deep pool. Love that. Harvested what had been emerging anyways, letting energy through. Beautiful. Letting energy through, which is essentially what we're doing in this practice, right? Is like that reciprocity again of like seeing ourselves in connection with the world out and like bringing it through ourselves and then being aware of our stuff and the filter that we bring it through. So I hope if anybody else wants to pop it into the chat, that'd be great. I hope that again, my intention here was that I hope that you can see that if you have a space where you're creating an art journal or someplace that you're routinely showing up to, there is so much value in going back through it from time to time and looking, even just being there and being like, oh yeah, I was in that spot that day, right? Like, oh yeah, that felt so big, or it's not so big anymore. Wow, that was so interesting. I started to play with something and now it's not here, right? But even just the other day I just took my art journal and sat in a coffee shop and just took like words, like we always do so much writing, right? And I just took out phrases and words to maybe cultivate and bring into a different poem. Yana in the chat says, how do you know a particular piece or process is finished? That's a big question. That's a good question, Yana. I don't know that I will just give you like, and I think you as an artist probably have your own idea around this too. I don't know that anything's ever finished. I think you kind of just pause on it, right? And share it. Like, really, I think, again, and what I shared with you around my own creative process, like, and I'm going to do these poems, and I actually already have an intention to be like a multimedia piece around it or whatever, right? Like, I think it's finished when you decide that there's no energy there, right? When you decide that that if we go back to that tiger tail piece, right, that the idea has moved through you and you've kind of harvested there. Yeah, that's what I would say, but it'd be interesting to have a deeper conversation around that. Anybody else want to have a thought about how do you know when a particular piece is finished? I recognize our time here too. Kathy says, Heige holidays, less stress and more art. Oh, that's amazing, Kathy. Love that. Kathy, just so you know, in the Inspiration Library, we are about to do this month, we're going to spend some time in a community creating together some art postcards that we're going to mail to each other. So we're going to spend some time like in the community together. I'm going to walk you through a bit of a reflective process around holidays and winter and what's to harvest through there, what you love around that. And then we're going to create tiny little postcards and we're going to mail them to each other, or you're welcome to make some to share with each other's, because I feel like that's a very huggy thing to do. So thank you, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for like showing up again and again to this process. I hope that you are still harvesting things from it and getting to know yourself and observing yourself through this process. We have one class left for it. It's called Resilience next week, and we're really going to thread everything together. Thanks for going on the wild adventure with me. I know we're past the time, but I just thought I would just give you again, I'd love for you for your homework this week to just play with the order. Maybe you want to set your intention, and maybe you want to end with stillness and start with writing. Maybe you want to start with art making and then move to stillness and then write, right? Like play around with this, make it your own. What you feel into like how this works for you and make it your own. So we will stop there so I don't keep going over time. I'm also losing my voice, so that's a good sign to stop too. Thank you so much for being here. All the friends on the recording too that will catch this later. I hope to see you next week for our last one. If you're interested in learning more about the little postcard thing, or actually the other thing, if you want to join us for one of the open studios that we have happening on Wednesday, I'd love to give you, I'd love to just have you come in and join us with that too. Some of you I know I will see tomorrow for the open studio. If you want to, if some of you would like to join too, just send me a message and I'll see if I can set you up. Okay. We will see you later. Bye, everyone.
Hi, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bye.